Finally, it's over. I've done it. It was a struggle, lots of ups and downs, but after 9 months I finally finished it. The webcomic is done. So, to celebrate the fact that I actually finished a big project for once in my life, I'm gonna tell you how I did it and what I learned from it. In the beginning, the story was only supposed to be written in prose. I didn't plan on it becoming a comic. I just wanted to have a finished story, since most of my stories I've never actually finished, because they were so long. From the very beginning, I knew I wanted to include witchcraft in the story somehow. Not sure why, but I guess it was more of a way to get ideas floating. I remember that the Abyss idea was inspired by Made in Abyss. Still gotta finish that one. But to be honest, besides that, I don't remember much of the actual process of writing it, except that I wanted to base it on a theme instead of just the world and characters. Here are some themes that I wrote down when I was writing the story. You can pause it if you want. There were a lot of rewrites before I got to the final draft, but I would have to spoil it if I talked about it. I ended up never actually writing a script and just kept the pose as reference. I kinda gave up on it early on and decided to just figure out the paneling on the storyboarding phase. The thing I did figure out though was that the story was gonna be broken down into 5 chapters. Before I talk about how I started drawing the whole thing, I'm gonna talk about the world building aspect, since that's something I always give a lot of attention to, because I really like doing it, and like actually writing the damn story, even though that for this particular story, the world building wasn't as developed as in my previous ideas, since this one was more focused on the theme and messaging than in the world itself. I wanted to set it into a fantasy world, but since I didn't want to develop the world too much, I set it in a generic small town. And of course, if you have witches in the small town, you gotta do a witch trial, and of course that had to be a priest. I didn't develop their religion that much, but they have their own symbol, I guess, which I only figured out when I was drawing the little church in the background of the first panel. I wanted to make the main character's hair green, so I decided that in this world the hues of the hair go from red to green instead of red to yellow, and I also decided that I wanted the characters to have all nature-based names. The most world-building thing I did, or at least that I tried to do, was the magic system. The dark magic, as the townsfolk called it in the story, which is a rune-based magic system. I wanted to make it based around programming and spent quite a while thinking about it, but then I figured out it was too hard and it never felt exactly right. By the end I just used some generic rune circles. I made a 5-month plan to finish the comic and I thought I could actually make it, but mostly due to issues I didn't plan, procrastination, and the fact that I also started doing other things in the meanwhile, it took way longer. At first I just drew some random sketches of the characters before anything. At this point I was still debating if I should do the comic or not. And then, when I decided what I was gonna do, I planned the 5 months, starting with some head rotations to try to better understand how the characters looked. I used this video by Manu Mercurial for reference. The rotations weren't perfect and they always ended up changing a bit, but it helped to get a better perspective of the character's overall face. My first storyboard was a mess, and I was really anxious when trying to make it, and then later I ended up not using much of it, but it helped with having an overall idea of what I wanted and to not overthink. Something that also helped though is that I cheated a lot. I used 3D models for nearly all my panels, and for the backgrounds I traced from AI art. Then I had to make character sheets midway through chapter 2, cause the characters looked inconsistent even though I had made the rotations, and that also took a while. I struggled with a lot of stuff in the process of drawing this comic. I felt demotivated and procrastinated quite a bit because of my lack of discipline. It was pretty hard to get out of my comfort zone and really commit to something, especially when drawing backgrounds and storyboarding. I always had this internal voice telling me not to do it, that it was too painful, that it wasn't worth it, that I could do it later. I had this extremely perfectionist mindset that made me not move forward. I felt that my art was bad and that the characters were inconsistent, that my shading made no sense, that my shots were lazy, and that my poses looked weird. I had to build discipline to actually finish it because motivation wasn't enough. I had to fight the voice in my head, I had to trust the plan, even though it didn't turn out exactly as expected. I wrote down daily goals. It didn't always work, but I kept at it. Some things that helped me overcome that voice were: 1, that I started streaming on Twitch, so it was a way to keep me accountable. 2, I started doing morning runs to clear my head and let the anxiety out. I stopped doing them later on, but it really helped me in the beginning. 3, I started doing what I call the boredom trick, which basically means that if I didn't want to work on the comic, I wouldn't. I would just sit there or sleep till I got bored enough to actually do it. It's so simple when you hear it, but I had never thought about it before. Thanks, Dr. K. I had to have the just do it mentality. I had to remind myself that I didn't have to be perfect, just good enough. I learned to draw more passively and more consistently, not having the need to have a dopamine high every time I draw and just do it every day or most days, even though I don't particularly feel like it. I had to get out of my comfort zone and draw things I don't usually draw or that I'm scared of drawing, cause I didn't feel I was good enough, and sometimes I even surprised myself on how some of the shots turned out. Before, I used to just draw characters standing up, but now I learned to experiment with shots. If I was gonna start another comic now, I would probably do some things differently. I would sketch way more ideas, mostly for the settings and panels. I would do small thumbnails on paper and all that, and then make some character sheets before I actually started. The reason I didn't do all that was because I wasn't exactly visualizing how it would turn out in the panels, and overthinking wasn't helping. But now I have a better idea of what I needed. I also wouldn't trace from 3D models this time, since it makes the characters pretty stiff. When I was still drawing the final chapter, I decided to post the first chapter on Webtoons, and then it was taken down for censored nudity. Yes, my webcomic has nudity. It was censored, so I hoped they wouldn't take it down, but they did, so I moved on to tapas. Link in the description. I could even post it uncensored this time, and that's what I did. It was technically taken down from the mobile version of the app, but it's still on the desktop version. My views then declined after episode 2. Maybe I lost the excitement about posting it and that showed. Not sure, but yeah. I managed to finish it and posted the last chapter on May 26th, 9 months after I began the planning phase. I managed to finish the comic, but I'm tired of it. I only kept going because I told myself I was gonna finish it. But I don't think I enjoyed most of the process, and I couldn't wait to be done with it. It took way too long and it didn't feel fun. I realized even more than before that I like doing different things instead of just drawing the same thing all the time, and so I don't think I'm gonna make another comic anytime soon. But even so, I'm glad I made it, cause it did teach me a lot. I'll be posting more videos from now on, hopefully, just experimenting and seeing what works. Also, my comic is on tapas, link in the description. If you watched the video till the end, thank you for giving me a boost in the algorithm. And if you enjoyed my content, please comment, like and subscribe. If you don't, you'll get 7 years of bad luck. Okay, bye!